Mad Max released right in between Metal Gear Solid 5 and The Witcher 3. We're not here for The Witcher 3 yet. Not yet anyway. If you want to see that, subscribe. Mad Max is probably one of the most overlooked open world games I've ever played. I just made a review on my other main channel, Jack's Game Reviews, and I couldn't help but make a retrospective on it because I want to talk more in depth with spoilers the lot. And I also want to talk about the development process beforehand, or more about how it released and why it failed financially. So let's start there. So Mad Max was developed by Avalanche Studios, the guys behind Just Cause. If you don't know what Just Cause is, it's another open world franchise, but it's more focused on destruction, interacting with the world, having a bit of fun. There's no real focus on story or lore or anything. You play as a guy who blows shit up, which is why they're perfect for Mad Max. You see, Mad Max as a franchise, it's big, but it's still very niche. It's as niche as you can really get while making a lot of money. The original films came out in like 1980 with Mel Gibson and all that stuff, but, you know, it kind of faded out of cultural relevance, I guess. And then Mad Max Fury Road got released in 2014. Mad Max Fury Road, the film, is really good. It's really good, but it didn't get a game with it, which is where Mad Max comes in, the game. It's a bit confusing because they just called it Mad Max, so it's hard to talk about. But the game came out in 2015, and I don't really know too much about the development behind it. I don't know much about the development process or anything like that, but I know it released in between Metal Gear Solid 5 and The Witcher 3. Two of the biggest games of 2015, and arguably two of the biggest games of the last decade. At the end of the day, this really is just another open world game. The story isn't really interesting, it's not really worth talking about too much, but we will talk about it. But it was just another open world game to many people, especially critics. I give critics a hard time when it comes to like the big guys, IGN, GameSpot, because they have multiple reviewers, but even, you know, down to earth reviewers, people that are just themselves running their channel by themselves like myself, even they were getting a bit tired of the open world formula, and they still are today because it's still going on. But every now and then, a game for me like Mad Max comes around where it's everything you tend to dislike in games today, but it has just such a level of quality in what it tries to do, you can't help but respect it. So, this is Mad Max, a retrospective, or why it's so underrated. I'm not really sure what I'm going to call the video, but I'm basically just going to be circle jerking it, while also giving it a bit of a critical look, especially when it comes to story, because oh my god, that has got to be the worst part of this entire game. The story is shit. It is shit. So, let's go back to 2015. So, Mad Max gets announced. Don't remember too much of it. I think it just got a trailer. It wasn't really at any presentations or anything. It didn't get a lot of attention, really. All the attention was going to like the big games, like The Last of Us Remastered, The Witcher 3, Metal Gear Solid. You know, as I've already mentioned, there were a lot of good games coming out around 2014, 2015. So it just got overshadowed by the bigger IP. It's just how it goes. It's just how it works. So gameplay comes out, there's a gameplay demo I'm pretty sure, and you know, it just looks like another open world game. And it's from an IP that a lot of people don't really watch or understand. It's a guy in a car, there's sand, it's an apocalypse again, and it just looks a bit generic. It comes down to release, and it just does not do very well. It could have been a lot worse, but it kind of failed to live up to expectations in every sense, financially, critically, and just overall engagement for the game's release, for potential DLC, for a potential sequel. It was pretty clear right from the get-go it probably was not going to continue on. It doesn't help that Avalanche also just released Just Cause 3. You see, Just Cause was Avalanche's baby. It's the game you go to for an Avalanche game, you know what I mean? It's just one of them. So Mad Max was kind of just out of the blue, kind of out of the way. And to release it right after Just Cause 3, not even a year apart, it kind of sets off red flags, doesn't it? You think, hang on, they've just released a game. Clearly this is just their dud. They didn't do much marketing for it. It's a Mad Max game. What the hell's Mad Max? Who cares about Mad Max? So right from there, even big fans of Avalanche, some of them anyway, probably weren't interested in the game. They've just spent the hard money on Just Cause 3. So it just released at an inopportune moment, is what I'm trying to say. With games like The Witcher 3 coming out with incredible reviews, incredible financial success, along with Metal Gear Solid 5, which didn't review as well as Witcher 3 because of obviously half the game was like cut, I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly. But that was still successful because it's Metal Gear Solid, one of the most popular franchises in gaming. Good job, Konami. You've really done well with Metal Gear Solid, haven't you, mate? What are Konami doing, man? I don't understand it. They're remaking Metal Gear Solid 3. Wow. don't you make a new game? Why don't you get creative, Konami? Wait, last time they did that, they did zombies. I don't get it. I don't understand Konami. Anyway, let's move on. So Mad Max releases. No one plays it. I don't know anyone that's actually played Mad Max apart from people in the comments of my previous video on Jack's Game Reviews, which is such a shame. So Mad Max opens up with a really, really cool cutscene. Max is roaming the world. He's been attacked. His car's getting nicked. He's trapped. He's got to beat his way out. He's got to stop this guy called Scrotus, and he puts a chainsaw on his head, and then off you go. You're thrown into the open world. You meet a guy called Chum Bucket. He works on cars and he hates dogs, apparently. I mean, he doesn't hate dogs, but he'd probably eat the dog rather than keeping it as a pet, which is not cool. From there, you go on, you learn the combat, you learn how the car works, you learn how you learn what you're going to be doing for most of the game. No, that's a lie, all of the game. And off you go. Mad Max is all about upgrading your car called the Magnum Opus. The Magnum Opus, the key to it, while you're upgrading it, is because Max wants to travel to the lands of silence, I think they call it. I think, because it's not very memorable, to be honest. And that's about it for the story. I'm not even joking. That's it. Max meets a couple of characters every now and then. When you go into a new region of the open world, you do a couple tasks with them, and then you go off to the next region. The only time the story gets interesting is towards the end, to its detriment, weirdly enough. You see, with Mad Max, it's all about the gameplay. It's all about the open world. It's all about exploring, you know what I mean? Going and finding loot, upgrading your car, upgrading Max. So the story just naturally comes second. It just is what it is. But once you hit Act 3 and Act 4, you've kind of already upgraded most of the things you can upgrade because you've been looting and all that crap. So the developers decide, let's put more story in. The problem with that is that it's super, super rushed. You meet a redhead girl and a kid, and Max is tasked with saving the kid, and he brings the kid back, and all of a sudden this woman wants Max to stay around. I guess she wants a father figure for a kid. Or something. Even I don't understand, and I beat it like 2 days ago. So the story kind of loses any sense of consistency or just natural progression, you know what I mean? It's really weird. But because of that, the developers take a bit more risks with how they present the story, because so far the entire story has been all exposition, really. You meet a character, they tell you who they are, what they do. Chum Bucket's in the back of your head just saying all this story stuff. Exposition, it's just exposition. But in Act 3 and Act 4 they decide to become a bit more risky with visual storytelling. You start getting these weird dreamlike sequences with Max, and you kind of start to somewhat understand Max as a character, because Max throughout this entire game, he's just a guy. He's just a mad person. He's just there for the player. He is a vessel for the player throughout the entire game. But with Act 3 and Act 4, they kind of really do try to push the story onto you, because I think the thought process was, you spend 15 hours with this bloke, you're gonna care about him, but that just isn't the case. I did not give two shits about Max. I don't think anyone actually cares about Max in Mad Max. They care about the world, they care about the other characters around him. He's just the vessel there. So they did kind of nail it from a branding point of view. But as a game itself, as a singular game, it needed more for Max, and, well, we'll just get into it. We'll get into it. Let's do it. I've got time. Let's do it. Max as a character doesn't need to work. That's what I'm trying to say. He's a vessel for the player. He's a vessel for the people watching the film, okay? Everything's about the open world. But as time goes on, they really do try to get you to care about him. And I respect that. I respect that a lot, because the ending it wouldn't be as impactful if they just did the same thing over and over again, which is why I respect the addition of this female character and this kid. Admittedly, I don't know their names because they're not very interesting, but that's not the point of the characters. The point is, Max kind of has a glimpse of hope. You know what I mean? He kind of has a glimpse of going back to what it was like before the apocalypse. And obviously that's a pretty basic thing to do for a character in an apocalypse film. Oh, I want to go back to my old life. Woo, 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 woo. Yeah, that's pretty basic to do. But it's something that Max kind of needed as a character in the game. So when it gets interesting, when it's finally reaching a point where you're like, hang on a minute, this story is actually kind of interesting. I might get into this. You get a glimpse of that, just like Max does. He gets a glimpse of hope. You get a glimpse of hope. And then the game's over. It just ends. It just ends out the blue. These characters are dead. Bye-bye. So what happens is Max meets them, he ditches them because he doesn't want to be friends with people, and then because of Chum Bucket, your friend, not friend, an ally in your car that helps you build the car, he accidentally gives information that is vital away, and the bad guy called Scrotus goes and kills the girls, and then you go and kill Scrotus, and Chum Bucket dies with the car because the Chum Bucket is more focused on the car than you and the characters that just died, basically. That's what happens. And the reason I like the ending, despite the story being complete shit for like the entire game, the reason I like the ending is because it sticks with the idea of Max, this vessel that you can connect with, sort of, by putting your own thoughts onto him. But it works for Max, because at the end of the game, it's like you've done nothing. He just goes back, he's got his car, and he just drives off with no one around him, everyone's dead, and he's just back to being Max, a lone wanderer trying to escape whatever life has for him. You know what I mean? He drives off, and the credits roll. And I really like it. That's the whole point. That's the whole point. It's meant to kind of feel pointless. So from a story perspective, it kind of works, but it also doesn't. It really depends on what you want. You want something that is more thematically consistent with the character, or do you just want another happy-go-lucky story where Max gets the girl and he changes, and you know he's a better man and he's less mad or whatever. That's the easy route to go down. But to finish it off the way Avalanche did with this story, it takes a lot of balls, you know, because you're gonna feel like, wow, this was kind of a waste of time. Why did I do all this? And then, you know, you sit on it for like 5 minutes, the credits roll, you get back in your car, and you're like, well, actually, it makes a lot of sense. So that's what I think about the ending, but I've kind of jumped ahead, haven't I? Let's slow it down a bit. Throughout the game, you're going to meet different characters like Jeet, Rugrash, I think he's called, as well as Pink Eye. These are like your 3 main factions that you're going to meet throughout the game because they're in different parts of the map. It's kind of like Red Dead Redemption 2, where you go to a specific part of the map in the story, you meet new characters, and then you move on to the next part, and the other characters are kind of forgotten, you know what I mean? It's kind of like that. Only these characters are far more interesting than Max. Some of them are really stupid, it's pretty obvious. A lot of them are overacted, but in a world like Mad Max where the apocalypse happens and the main currency in the world is fuel, it kind of makes sense to make things very heightened, and I quite like that. But those are my thoughts on the story. Obviously, it's probably the worst game to do my first ever retrospective on, especially since I don't have like a proper script. I have like bullet points of what I want to talk about, because the story is just, there's not much to talk about at all, to be honest with you, which is unfortunate. But like I said at the start of the video, I'm going to be making other retrospectives, like on Witcher 3, all that stuff, Far Cry games probably. I'm going to be ranking every Far Cry game, ranking every Assassin's Creed game, all that stuff. So make sure you subscribe for that. Join the Sticky Man. Stick with the Sticky Man. Let's go. Stick with me, please, I beg. 60 subs already in a week. Let's go. Anyway, let's go to the gameplay. Oh. Now, if you've come from Jack's Game Reviews, because I made a review on my 20k channel firstly, and now I'm doing the retrospective, you already know what I'm going to say about the gameplay. It is the king here. This is the king. This is why you buy Mad Max. The gameplay of Mad Max is absolutely phenomenal. Repetitive, but phenomenal. So, firstly, Magnum Opus. So this is your car. This is what you're going to be upgrading throughout the entire game. The whole point of playing this game. You're going to be running around, you're going to be looting, you're going to be shooting, and you're going to be punching and kicking and grabbing and killing, you know what I mean? You're going to be doing all that all in one go, upgrading your car. You got to find loot, you got to find project parts, you got to find all the stuff. It's a looter shooter basically without the shooting really. And while that does sound repetitive, because it is very repetitive, it is, I can't even deny that. I don't know what Avalanche did. Maybe they took a load of people, they experimented on them and their brains and how their dopamine works, but this game never ever gets boring, at least for me. It never got boring. In 15 to 30 hours of gameplay, doing the same thing over and over again, and I didn't get bored, is pretty impressive. So the whole goal is to upgrade your car, and you get various upgrades. You can customize your armor, your base for your car. So basically I played with like a muscle type car for most of the game, but you can actually unlock things called Archangels, which is very specific car designs which you can unlock and put on your car, so it feels a bit different, and they feel different, they handle different, they play different, which is really important, and we'll get to that in a minute. But I mainly use the muscle car, which is like the first like variant of car you can get. I just like it, I don't know, it just suits me, I don't know why. But throughout the game you're going to unlock various upgrades that completely change how you play. It completely changes how the car handles, how effective it is in combat, how quick can you escape, how intimidating it is in some sense. I mean, there's no gameplay factor for that, but mentally up here, when you get a really cool looking car that looks dangerous, which looks like it could kill you in seconds, it feels kind of cool to just drive up and get out and like, what you say, you know what I mean? It's pretty cool. But that's the beauty of Mad Max. You think, oh yeah, car customization. Loads of games have got that. But Mad Max just does something very different with it. The best way I can put it is just to describe how the upgrades work. So firstly, upgrades aren't about upgrading to the best bit. It's not about getting the best upgrade. It's not about that. It's about finely tuning your car to how you want it to handle. For example, I prefer top speed. the car combat can drag on a little bit. We'll get to it in a minute, but it can drag on a little bit. So I like the idea of escaping as quickly as possible. So that's what I did. I upgraded my car to have the fastest top speed possible, and over time I upgraded my engine for faster acceleration. But I watched a bunch of gameplay before I made this review. A lot of people tended to go with armor, so the car was much slower. Its handling was much worse, but they were in car combat for like half an hour and they were having an absolute blast. So it just goes to show that you can play this game in so many different ways just with the car alone, which adds a lot of options. It adds a lot of customization to this repetitive game that could potentially play very different for everyone, which I really, really like. Obviously, it's not an RPG. You're not going to have different choices with story. You're not going to have a completely different experience to everyone else. But with the amount of customization you've got in this car, it really does feel like your own little game. You know what I mean? Your own little car. You've spent ages on it. And it gives people an option to tune cars without having to buy one in real life because they're really fucking expensive at the minute. Even fucking old cars. But how do you upgrade your car? Well, it's quite simple. You run around different camps, different areas in the world, and you collect loot. It's literally called scrap. You're going to be collecting scrap, you're going to be upgrading the bases of the people I've already mentioned like Pink Eye, Rugrash, Jeet, all that stuff. And over time you're going to reduce the danger of the environment you're in while also getting more scrap over time, like investments. You invest in these buildings that you are allowed to explore without any danger, and you get a slow income of scrap over time. And you unlock this scrap by beating up enemies, looting them, looting the areas that they're in, as well as doing side missions and stuff like that. That's how you unlock your scrap, which is why it's so repetitive. It's as Ubisoft as it can get. The combat here is absolutely phenomenal. It never gets boring. The impact you feel with every punch, every kick, every takedown, every shot. I can't really think of a game that has better impact with the free flow combat system of the Arkham games. Because this game is clearly inspired by the Arkham games. The combat is incredibly similar, but they do enough things that makes it unique. For example, your takedowns are only available to you when you have shivs. So a shiv is like an instant kill. You have to unlock that upgrade over time. And then you get Fury mode, which is like a rage mode that I'm pretty sure some games do have that copied the system. But here it feels really good. The sound just changes. You become more focused. You just pow, 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 pow. It's really, really cool. Enemy variety is a little bit lacking. It is a little bit lacking, but there's enough there to keep you interested. So you've got like shield enemies. You've got fast enemies that dodge your punches, so you have to counter them. You've got other enemies that are more ranged, like snipers, and then you've got big guys that have hammers that you have to dodge. There's enough here to keep you interested for at minimum 15 hours, I believe anyway. And with the upgrades, you get a ton of different options for combat, like wall takedowns. You can upgrade your car to take out enemies before you go into combat. We'll get to that in just a minute. And overall, as a package, it is the best part of the entire game. Some would say the car combat, but we'll get to that in a minute. Nah, fuck that. Let's get on with the car combat. This video is already 25 minutes long. Well, probably 15, but we'll see. So the car combat is the big takeaway. This is what makes Mad Max the most unique open world game I've played in a while, is that it's all based on car combat, or car fu, as some people might call it. So the key is to upgrade your car, as I've said multiple times, but this time we're going to talk about weapons. So there's a couple weapons you can choose. You've got the grappling hook thing, where you can shoot it, you can take down fences, you can take down people, you can fling them across you, which is really fun. You've got, I can't even remember what they're called, I think they're like thunder strikes or something, not thunder strikes, like thunder. You basically have a bunch of grenades on a stick, and you throw the stick and it blows up. That's really cool. You also have access to your shotgun to shoot out tires and all that stuff. And you also have a sniper, which is really interesting. Now, it doesn't sound like a lot of variety. Yeah, it's true. There isn't much to it. But the way you can take down cars, enemy vehicles, is where it gets interesting. So you can shoot out tires, you can kill the driver, you can blow up fuel tanks, you can hook yourself onto a car and drag it along with you if you have enough strength in your car. It's really interesting, and it's hard to talk about. It's better off showing you. But that's why it's so unique, because there's loads of different vehicles in this game with different enemy factions and all that stuff. So every time you go into car combat, it feels unique, especially towards the end of the game, because you start meeting a couple more powerful enemies that have like mines in their cars. You have to dodge the mines while you're trying to bash into them. You're trying to pick your targets one by one, but another car comes flying at you. You're just like, wow, what the fuck is going on? Whoa. It's really cool. It's really cool. But it's not perfect. Nothing ever is. And for Avalanche's first attempt at this kind of combat that I haven't really seen in any other game recently anyway, I think it was a really good first attempt. The flaws come in when it comes to, obviously, variety. I feel like it needed a couple more weapons, a couple more options to take out vehicles. Enemy variety, while it is decent. I definitely think there could have been a couple more interesting ideas. Like from the film Fury Road, you had those enemies that are on like the sticks and they start like flying all over the place like that, and Max gets on at one point. I think it'd be really cool to have Chumbucket, your ally, drive the car where you could climb up and try and jump onto another car and steal it or something. It sounds ridiculous, but Mad Max itself is a ridiculous idea, so I think it'd be really cool. The more creative you can get with it, the better, I think, anyway. But unfortunately, it's just a little bit lackluster. But it's still really cool, and the most unique part of Mad Max, completely. Nothing quite like a cup of tea, you know what I mean? Oh. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is the open world and level design. I didn't talk about it at all in my non-spoiler review at Jack's Game Review, so I think now would be the best time to talk about it in a retrospective, you know? I think that's what you call a retrospective. I don't even know what a retrospective technically is. You look back at it, I think? I think so, anyway. Hey, who knows? Maybe I got this completely wrong. I'll have a comment down telling me I'm wrong anyway, so we'll see. So the open world itself, it's not a living, breathing open world. There's no, like, civilians or anything like that roaming the world. Everyone you meet is going to be an enemy apart from, you know, your factions inside your buildings. But the world itself is always an enemy. There's always something around every corner that's trying to kill you. Whether it's mines in, you know, the roads, where it does warn you there's mines there, but mines can kill you pretty much instantly. At times, there's a giant storm that comes flying across. You get warned about it, but if you go into the storm, you can get special scrap and all that crap that gives you more scrap than usual. But it sounds and looks so cool, and it's such a cool idea. The open world itself is your enemy, and I love that. Open world games now are so sanitary. You just walk around, you don't feel threatened until you see the red dot on your map, and it's just like, ugh. But if you're in Mad Max, everywhere, you got to be alert at all times. There could be an enemy driving at you, there could be mines, there could be a storm coming. You could walk into in an area of the map where you're not supposed to be yet, and they will absolutely mark you. It's so fun, it's so dangerous, you're just at the edge of your seat all the time, and I love that. But the key with the open world is the bases you're going to be taking on. Throughout the open world, there's a ton of bases that you have to go to and, you know, you have to beat. And each base is really well designed, I think. So first up, you got your perimeter defenses. So that's before you even enter the base. This often results in snipers shooting at you. You've got these guys that throw grenades at you. You've got multiple cars roaming around trying to stop you from getting in. And as well as fences and, you know, ways to stop you and your car getting in. So sometimes you have to get out of your car to infiltrate it quietly. All that stuff. So this is just one layer of it, and often each base has the same enemies, you know what I mean? There's not much variation to it, but the way they design it, the way you get into bases, is always different. Obviously you can do the basic thing where you take out like a fuel tank that's blocking you from ramming the fence, but there are so many different options with these bases. You can go in from the top, there's usually a zip line, or you can go underneath, you can climb underneath under the base and climb your way up after beating all the enemies downstairs. I think it's really cool. And the way they design it, it's so much more interesting than your average Ubisoft game where you walk into a base anywhere you want, it's all one level, you take out a couple enemies, you go into like a building, and then that's that. With Mad Max, you have multiple objectives that you need to complete while doing it, while taking on enemies, while taking out the big guys, and it never, ever, ever gets boring to me. I may be in the minority here, because obviously it is repetitive. That is, you know, it is repetitive. I gotta keep mentioning that because it's a very flawed game. But for me, it's just my kind of game. You know what I mean? This is what I want from an open world. Something that is so much passion put into it. You can't help but feel it. And even though it's repetitive, even though they had to cut corners, which is pretty clear with the budget, they still managed to make a really fun open world experience, despite having released Just Cause 3 literally months beforehand. It just goes to show that they really did care about this game, and it makes me care about the game, you know what I mean? I kind of wish it was more successful. I wish I played it at launch. Now, some bases are a bit disappointing, some of them can be a bit similar to others, but you're often switching from your car to melee combat, to shooting, to exploring, and then going off and doing a different activity. You never really think about it after like 2 minutes. You're like, oh yeah, that base was fine. And then you go to the next base and that one's really fucking cool, you know what I mean? So, here's what I'm gonna do. I know I probably haven't talked about everything you guys want me to talk about, especially since it's my first retrospective. I'm not expecting this to be really good. I expect it to be good, but not perfect, you know what I mean? It's just one of those learning curves, because I'm not used to making long form content. But what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna leave it to you. If you manage to get to the end, if there's something I haven't talked about, leave it in the comments down below. I'll reply to you and we can have a good conversation down below. Because I think that's the best way to do like these review type videos, is to get people in the comments, get them talking, get yourself talking in the comments, talk about your experience, and I can kind of respond to it rather than it just being about me, you know what I mean? It's a bit boring, isn't it? Or this guy's just talking about himself. pretty boring, isn't it? That's the key. So leave your comments down below. Let me know what you think. Obviously, like the video. If you got to the end, you must have enjoyed it a little bit. So come on, give that like button a tap, and maybe even subscribe to stick with the sticky man. We're at 63 subs now, so I'm very much looking forward to seeing where this channel goes. Thank you for watching. Really appreciate it, and hopefully I'll see you in the next video.